Hello and welcome to special coverage of the Noor Salman trial here on clickorlando.com. I'm Bridget Ellison and we have some breaking news in the trial. A judge just handed the lawyers for Salman a setback, denying their plea that all charges should be thrown out. And News 6's Nadia Giannis has the very latest on this, and you've learned the judge made a decision.
He did, Bridget, just about 30 minutes ago, and like you said, he has decided to deny the defense's motion to acquit Noor Salman of all of her charges, including aiding and abetting and obstruction of justice in this case. The judge making the decision just before lunch, saying he wants the jury to make that decision moving forward. So now they are going to shift this afternoon into jury instructions. But this morning, before this argument even happened, the judge wanted the government to concisely and clearly lay out their case for not only him, but the jury, admitting that the government has put out a lot of evidence that a lot of it doesn't pertain to Noor Salman. So the judge asked the government what the jury needs to know. Is there evidence against Ms. Salman? And this is what the government said. So far, the jury has seen a lot of evidence from the government that takes us through the mind and steps of Omar Mateen in the weeks leading up to his mass murder, showing, for example, this video released last night of Mateen by himself purchasing the 6-hour rifle he used in the attack. And video of Mateen again by himself just hours before he opened fire at Pulse, casing the House of Blues at Disney Springs. But after being asked to do so by the judge, the government laid out their 3 points they say prove Salman is guilty. First, she made a cover story sending this text: "If your mom calls, say Nemo invited you out and Noor wants to stay home." Second, she was with Mateen when the government says she cased City Place and was on camera with him when the government says she cased Disney Springs. Third, the purchases. The government saying Salman was with Mateen when he purchased ammo for his work gun at Walmart, and there again at an Orlando Bass Pro Shop when Mateen bought 30 magazines of ammo. Also, the government said Salman received gifts like an $8,000 ring set from Kay Jewelers and then going on a shopping spree just days before are all signs she encouraged and in turn aided and abetted her husband. But in the defense motion for acquittal, they quoted Shakespeare's Macbeth, Salman's attorney Fritz Scheller explaining what it meant walking into court this morning. Can you explain it to me? I'm sorry.
A tale, I think what it says in the motion is, it's a tale full of sound and fury, ultimately signifying nothing.
Signifying nothing. That is what Fritz Scheller yelled as he walked into court, arguing again for acquittal for Noor Salman on her charges. The breaking news just within the last 30 minutes, the judge denied that, and it was just about 10 minutes ago Salman's family came out and reacted to that decision. They said that they expected this coming, that this was a procedural move. They were hopeful for it, but now they're hopeful that the jury will see that the prosecution simply doesn't have the evidence, they say.
And reacting to the hearings the hearing that took place this morning, obviously this was a special type of hearing that the expectation was not that there was going to be any dismissal necessarily today. However, but in the greater context of this trial, in trials you have to have evidence to convict people, and I think ultimately that's what the jury's going to be looking for. And so far, the government has failed to provide real evidence, hard evidence, that links Noor Salman to the crimes of Omar Mateen. They've established Omar Mateen is a monster that killed those individuals. No one is denying that. But when it comes to evidence that Noor Salman participated, the evidence is not there. A lot of it just relies on this one statement that was written by an agent named Enriquez. It was not written by Noor Salman. It was written by Agent Enriquez. That they are saying that this is the statement of Noor Salman, which parts of that statement we learned yesterday is now the investigators themselves determined that parts of that statement is in fact false.
And that is what happened yesterday. The government really is relying on Noor Salman's 12-page written statement. And yesterday, the defense showed that the prosecution doesn't have the evidence that shows that Noor Salman ever actually cased the Pulse nightclub. This was kind of a bombshell that was thrown yesterday in court, and that is what the family is talking about there. And that is why they feel hopeful that the jury will notice that moving forward, now that the judge has denied the defense's motion to acquit Noor Salman of her charges, the next step is create jury instructions. This is going to be incredibly technical and maybe boring at times, but it's also going to be incredibly important to how the judge instructs these jurors how to interpret the law and the charges in this case. That's happening this afternoon. Court resumes at 1:15, and we'll have the latest right here at News 6 at 4. Bridget.
Thank you, Nadine. And joining us now, News 6 legal analyst Rick Jancha. You were also there in court this morning. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Good to be here.
Yeah. And even though it is Friday, it's been a very eventful Friday
Very
in this
busy.
trial.
Yeah, they spent all morning pretty much arguing the motion for judgment of acquittal. I don't see that as a huge setback to the defense that it was denied, because the standard is at this stage in the proceedings that the court has to look at the evidence in the light most favorable to the government and reasonable interpretations thereof and inferences drawn on that. So it's not like it's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It just says accepting what the government has presented as true and inferences on that, could a reasonable juror find her guilty? And the judge ruled, yes, it's a jury question, because based on the evidence, and if the jury wants to make inferences concerning her conduct and what transpired, whether or not she was providing a cover story, whether she knew in advance, that type of thing, that's a jury question at this point. But it's totally different than the guilt phase, which is, did they prove it beyond a reasonable doubt? So I'm sure this motion will be raised again at the close of all the evidence, and it'll be a much higher standard for the government to meet at that time.
And with this trial headed now into the defense's case, to try to defend her, what do you see happening on Monday?
I would anticipate, because they've telegraphed what their defense is by the listing of expert witnesses, first and foremost, I think they'll try to show that Noor Salman was low average intelligence based on school records, that type of thing, and tests that they gave to her. The basis for that is that tying that in, that she was also an abused spouse, these factors taken together make her more susceptible than most people to giving a false confession. And so the defense argument is that the FBI put the words in her mouth. Those weren't her words. So they will be trying to present that to show that, yes, she made a statement, but really it was the FBI telling her what to say or suggesting to her, the answers that she should give.
And one of the biggest pegs on that is the pulse, the casing of pulse. Even though there's evidence of them casing other places, it's disputable whether or not pulse was really cased with her in tow.
I think everybody's accepted at this point that they did not case pulse in advance, because the government expert yesterday admitted that based on his analysis of the records, neither Mateen nor Salman had been to Pulse in the months prior to this offense. That tied together with the Google searches that Mateen did the night of the offense, going to Disney Springs first, and then Googling Orlando light clubs, and then going to Eve, actually, before he went to Pulse, shows that her statement in the purported confession that the FBI took, that they cased Pulse, is not true. And that's one of the arguments that the defense has made, that the government knew this a long time ago, but didn't disclose it, and therefore withheld exculpatory evidence and denied her a right to due process. So it's a lot of legal issues going on at the same time.
And do you anticipate things wrapping up sooner?
I would think that the defense, if they call what they've said, 8 to 10 witnesses, most of them being expert witnesses who did psychological tests, that type of thing, I would see the defense probably finishing Wednesday or Thursday. Then the government will have a chance to present any rebuttal evidence that they have. And then, of course, they'll have closing arguments. And I think the judge has already indicated he's not going to put a time limit on those. So I would anticipate the case probably being argued to the jury a week from Monday.
Well, thank you so much, Rick, for your analysis of the proceedings today. And because this is a federal trial, no cameras or recording devices are permitted in the courtroom, but we have a special page detailing everything that happens on clickorlando.com. You can always look for updates under the Noor Salman trial tab. And join us tonight at 6:30 for another discussion with News 6 anchor Lisa Bell, investigator Mike DeForest, and legal analyst Whitney Bone. Again, you can join us right here on clickorlando.com. Thanks for joining us. I'm Bridget Ellison.